Welcome to No Place Like Home, coming to you on Pinellas County Connection TV. The sponsor of the show is the Housing Finance Authority of Pinellas County. The HFA helps first-time homebuyers in Pinellas, Pasco, and Polk counties achieve their dream of home ownership. Working through a specialized group of lenders, the HFA offers a low rate on its 30-year fixed mortgage and helps with down payment and closing costs, too. We're proud to announce that in addition to our regular program, we have an additional $2,500 grant available to community heroes, such as full-time K-12 teachers, law enforcement officers, firefighters, EMTs, and certified first responders. Please visit our website, www.pinellascounty.org/HFA. For more information about our programs or comments about the show, give us a call, 727-223-6419. I'm Carmen Lemberg, your host for today's show. Julian couldn't join us. It's my pleasure today to introduce Miss Patricia Latshaw. Patricia serves Wright Flood as Principal Flood Coordinator and Senior Vice President of Compliance and Agency Training. Patty has over 20 years' experience with the Federal Flood Insurance Program and serves on several NFIP committees. Patty's well known in the flood insurance community for her flood expertise and as an insurance agent advocate to the NFIP. And she holds the designation as an associate in National Flood Insurance. That was a mouthful, but thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So we have so many changes that have happened now, major changes in the flood maps. And so that's what I want to talk about today and help people understand this. So my main question is, am I at risk for flooding, and how do I determine my flood risk?
I think everybody's at risk for flooding. It's, everybody is in a flood zone. But to find out what your specific risk is, I'd like to mention first Pinellas County website. PinellasCounty.org/flooding is probably one of the best websites I've seen to find out what your risk is, what your zone is. So you go on there and you click on quick view, and you type in your address, and your flood zone the map comes up actually. And then they click on it again, and it will tell them what their current risk is, flood zone, and what the new flood zone or potential flood zone is. Because you're going through these map changes, things may change later. But it also tells you, if you are in a high-risk area, what your base flood elevation is. And that's where they kind of determine where the flooding is going to go to, what they anticipate. It always can go higher, it can go lower.
Of course.
It's not always that. So we'll let them know, A zones, V zones are your high-risk areas.
Okay.
Zones that start with B, C, or X, those are your moderate or what they call low-risk areas for flooding.
Okay.
But everybody is in a flood zone.
I know you were talking about also being aware of the past flooding issues, and how does that play into it?
Well, when FEMA does the mapping, they will look at, of course, past flooding events, storm surge, things like that. When they do the new maps, they're always looking at new development, and then including rainwater runoff,
That's a biggie.
Things like that. It is a big one. We see that all over the country, these storms coming in, and, we have massive flooding, where a storm just sits on top of a area and just keeps raining and raining and raining.
It doesn't drain off.
I
See that in the news every summer when the storms come.
Right.
So, you're talking about more of the site, and I'm looking to buy a property. What should I know about flooding?
Okay. Well, you should first say, if you're buying a property, the realtor should know what the flood zone is for that property and let you know what that is. Also, when you go to buy a property, and you can always talk with the realtor about maybe getting what they call an elevation certificate. So if they are in a high-risk area, an A or V zone, they may already have one for rating purposes. They need that.
Yep.
And that saves you money from having to go out and get a new one there.
That's good to know.
Letting them know, checking that. Also, what is a great option is they can transfer their flood policy. So it's called,
Really?
the new owner can assume the policy. So say they can't find the elevation certificate, or say they're being grandfathered right now. That's a grandfathering term is for continuous coverage for some of the older homes. They can assume that policy, so that helps out a lot as well.
Does assuming a policy help with your rate?
It just keeps the current rate that the prior owner had. So instead of, sometimes what can happen is if there's no flood policy or they purchase a new policy, they're maybe having to be rated at actuarial rates instead of what the grandfathering rate was.
Oh, that's
So
good to
sometimes it
know.
can help. So going to your flood agent, or your insurance agent, I should say, and if you have that elevation certificate, any of that information, they can help you. If you're new to the area and you're looking for an agent, you can always call Wright Flood. We will give you the information. The number is 866-373-5663. If they're looking for an agent who writes flood, we can give them some options.
Oh, that'd be great to know. So many of the counties in our viewing area are going through all those revisions, and I know there's more information to know about those revisions. So what should we
Sure.
know about those revisions and how they're affecting it? I know I was talking to you before the show about how I'd been trying to investigate some of this stuff, and I was getting a little confused myself
Right.
when I was looking at the different maps. So maybe give us the short view of what we can look and all
Right.
that stuff.
FEMA has a website called floodsmart.gov. There's a lot of good information on there, especially with the map changes. There's actually, I brought a brochure for you. It's called What Property Owners Need to Know About Map Changes. So it goes more into depth so they can understand how the mapping process works and what that means for the changes they have. I know, again, your website, PinellasCounty.org, flooding/flooding, has a lot of that information as well. And I'm just going to put this out there. You have an awesome floodplain manager, Lisa Foster. She actually won the CRS award, which is a Community Rating System award. And this is an award FEMA gives out once a year. So
Wow.
throughout the whole country, she won that last year.
Wow.
So she's done, and it's all based on education for property owners and getting involved in what community rating system is when a community goes above and beyond basic floodplain management guidelines. But the big, great part about it is Pinellas County is now rated as a Class 5 in this, meaning that anybody in a special flood hazard area, they can get a 25% discount on their flood insurance premium. So
That's
it not just
huge.
helps the community, it helps, the homeowner as well.
Wow, that, I did not know that, and it's really exciting to know that our community is doing that, and we're lucky to have such a person working for us and taking care of us.
Exactly. You're very lucky. She's great. A couple other things is, people want to know what happens if I move. I was in a low risk zone or moderate risk zone, and now I'm in a high risk zone. And, the good news is FEMA put together this, it's called Newly Mapped. And it's a reduced premium. It's discounted. So they allow somebody to be newly mapped. So they can take care of that opportunity, because they're going to be maybe concerned about going from a low risk to a high risk.
That's exactly what I'm looking at, so that's
Yep.
good to know.
It is good to know. So, but the big part of that is they must purchase a flood policy, an NFIP flood policy, within a year of your map change
Okay.
to take advantage of that newly mapped.
What happens if the designation on my property as it's currently rated changes with the new map? What do I do then?
Right. So Again, if it goes from a low risk to a high risk, a lender's going to, if you have a federally backed mortgage, a lender's going to require flood insurance.
Oh, they're going to know about the change. They're going to give me that little letter, do it or get forced placed.
That's exactly it. And again, so that's your newly mapped where
Okay.
you can go into that. Now, if you go from a high risk to a low risk, then you want to look at, you're still susceptible to flooding. You should keep a flood policy, but you get a refund on your current policy term when the flood map changes. And you'll be eligible for a preferred risk policy as long as you haven't had prior flooding in the last 10 years. There's that eligibility to that. And then say if you just stay in the same flood zone, your base flood elevation may change. It's, they're doing the coastal mapping. They're looking at that. So we see some that don't change. Some of the base flood does change. It might go up. And if it goes up, we talked about grandfathering before, you can keep that lower base flood for rating as long as you have that continuous coverage.
Okay, that makes good sense.
And then if it goes down, then you get a refund too.
I like that. So, as a homeowner now, I spend an awful lot on my homeowner's insurance. At least I feel that I do. So do I really need to buy a flood insurance policy? I'm in a non-evac zone, 44 feet elevation, which in Florida, woo, that's high. But so do I really need it?
I think you do. Just from my experience and seeing people out there and being affected by a flooding event who think, well, I'm in this low-risk area, I'm not going to flood, or my bank's not requiring it, or that my bank says I no longer need to maintain a flood policy. You're looking at a couple inches of water in your home. You can look at $25,000 replacing your floorboards, things like that. Do you have that money sitting in your savings account to just say, oh, yeah, I have that. I can fix that. I don't need
Probably
a flood policy.
Not.
Right. And you can get $250,000 of building coverage, $100,000 of contents in that preferred risk zone for under $500 for your primary home. I mean, that's
what sort of
what you're building.
deductibles are you looking at with that?
Well, deductible is $1,250. Well, $1,250
Oh, that's
is the
not that
standard
bad.
deductible on that.
That's lower than my hurricane, so
Right.
and hurricane doesn't cover floods. So.
Right, but that goes for both building and contents. So it's
$1,250 each.
Each.
Okay,
exactly.
That's still not that bad. I mean, I know my parents lived in Colorado and got caught in the big floods several years ago.
Oh.
And for the first time, I mean, they'd lived in that house for 35 years and never, ever had a flood, ever. And the big floods came, and they wound up with 8 inches of water in the basement, which was fully lived-in basement, destroyed everything. And the cost to have somebody come in, clean that, and then the mold started really, really fast, so it had to be, treated and all that, and it was outrageous.
Right.
So, like I said, if they would have just had a preferred policy, it would have really, really helped a lot.
Would have helped. There is limited coverage in a basement for flood insurance. Unfortunately, in Florida, there's not too many basements. Which is good. And on the deductibles, there are other options for a standard policy. So say if you are in a high-risk area, you're not eligible for the preferred policy. If you are currently in that high-risk area, there's limitation of coverage in enclosures as well.
Oh.
Because those are always going to be, or I shouldn't say always, most of the time going to be below the base flood. So there is limited coverage. But, we see there's foundation elements that are covered under flood. So, like in your parents' case, if they had damage to the foundation elements, they may have been covered as well.
That makes sense.
So it's always good to talk to your insurance agent about your deductibles, what you can do. But overall, the cost of a flood policy, I know a lot of people rely on disaster assistance, and they think disaster assistance.
Yeah, it's not there.
No, I mean, FEMA, there is disaster assistance.
And they do a really great job.
Right.
But people think, like you say,
Right.
oh, I'll just talk to FEMA. FEMA will take care of everything.
Yes,
That's
yes.
just not going
I
to
had
happen.
my friend who flooded was like all excited about getting free money from FEMA, and then the next day came in and realized it's not free money.
Yeah.
There is disaster assistance. I mean, the average disaster assistance payout for Harvey, Maria, was
Irma,
was $5,000,
which is nothing.
which is nothing. It can go up. The maximum is $33,000. Very few people are eligible for that amount of money. And remember, disaster assistance, especially here in Florida, secondary homes,
Yeah, nothing.
nothing. Businesses. It's usually they have to go out and get a small business association loan. So it's really tough.
Florida is unique.
It is unique, and I will say, FEMA does have a booklet called Summary of Coverage,
Oh, good.
and that can be found on the floodsmart.gov website as well. So it kind of gives you more idea of what the coverages are.
Because that was my next question: is what sort of things does flood insurance cover?
It covers anything that it's your building that is damaged by a flood. So it's for building, it's the floodwaters has caused damage, or the floodwaters has caused damage to your contents, minus the deductible. That's the payout up to the policy limits.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, there is limitations in those enclosures and covered in your basements.
Because I guess I'm thinking, always this time of year when we're in flood season, you see all those Service Pro ads, after the flood will come in and clean everything up. Does it help cover costs for people like that to come in? And
There is some cleanup available under the flood policy, yes.
Because I know with my parents, it was all under the cleanup, and that was where, it was really expensive.
Yeah, because it can be.
What else? Is there anything else that we haven't talked about? I think we covered just about everything. We covered the websites. We covered all of that.
We do have something else is we put together a website ourselves. It's called wrightfloodadvice.org.
Okay.
And it's really geared to the consumer, so they have questions about flood insurance. They should check that out
Good.
as well. We do a lot of information. We train our agents to help insurers understand a flood, their risk of flooding, their options of coverages, the cost of coverages. So, we put this together really for the consumer to look at and try to understand more. FloodSmart is great, but also your website is very, very good. They do a fantastic job, I have to say that.
That's so nice to hear.
Yes.
Well, Patricia, thank you so much. We have covered some great information today. It's so exciting.